and welcome to another Doctor's Assistant 1 video. Today I'm doing a review of the Doctor Who story, The Edge of Destruction. It is the 20th of October 2023, which is a very weird thing to say out loud, to me anyway. And yeah, I mean, I am aware of I don't know if the word controversy is the right word to say, but the sort of hoo-ha with an unearthly child and that, the drama surrounding that. Or well, I'm not aware fully of the politics or the finer optics of that, but I just thought, well, with that and with the 60th literally being right around the corner, I thought, what better way to celebrate it than to do The Edge of Destruction as a review, because I've already reviewed An Unearthly Child. Yeah, from memory, I like that story. It's part one, brilliant. The other three, less so, but we're talking about Edge of Destruction. The third serial to ever be made, in the Beginnings box set, it's the obviously third story. An Unearthly Child is the first, then the Daleks, then this one. You've got on the cover Ian and Barbara, and then you've got the William Hartnell years, 1963 to 1966. PG, DVD videos, Edge of Destruction, Doctor Who logo there, BBC DVDs, and Bill Hartnell in the little circle of doom. You've got 2 out of 10 DVD logo there, BBC, the Edge of Destruction, the William Hartnell in the Circle of Doom again, Doctor Who logo. On the back you've got special features, you've got a little bio of the story, the strip of screenshots from the story, a bit more like sort of legal guff about how long the story is, as well as who wrote and directed it and that. You've got the writer's notes there, and you've got the disc, the DVD disc there as well. So yeah, overall, I kind of found this episode quite an interesting one. I didn't realise that the sort of, for lack of a better term, science lecture almost part of this story, in part 2, was from this story. I've seen clips of that on YouTube and on the internet for quite a few years now, like at least a decade, let's say, of my life, as it were. And yeah, I've never even realised that it was from The Edge of Destruction. You know what this episode reminds me of? Or maybe Listen was inspired by this episode. The episode Listen, you know. I don't know which one I like more. I mean, I like Capaldi as the Doctor more because obviously I'm 25, so I find him more enjoyable might not be the right word, but more palatable, more approachable. And obviously that being a story from 2014, I find it more accessible and more approachable from that angle, because it was aired as I was at college, I think. Yeah, I just started college here in the UK and or England back in 2014, of all things. Yeah, so that first series with Capaldi was like, you know, or his whole run is sort of that chapter in my life at college. Never went to university, but you know, speak for my sins, I guess. But anyway, I digress from personal stuff. I have to admit, the cast were actually really good. I think the least, or the weakest link, or the weakest TARDIS team crew member for me was Susan, of course. I mean, I guess that goes without saying, really, because, you know, that's kind of why she was written out of the show, because she wasn't given a lot to do, and then Caroline John wanted to do more and evolve the character more, but they kind of didn't do that. I mean, they kind of do in Dalek Invasion of Earth, to be fair. They kind of send her off very well. I think she gets a better send-off than a lot of later companions. You know, like, look at Leela. She gets shafted, in my humble opinion, with the exit she kind of gets. And likewise with Tegan, Javanka, with Peter. Her exit's literally just leaves stage left. And likewise, like Dodo, even another 60s Bill Hartnell companion, she literally leaves stage left, and then that's it. We never see Dodo again unless you subscribe to and or listen to the Doctor Who audio dramas by Big Finish. But yeah, I digress. It's a 47-minute episode or story, so it's 2 parts. It's a nice little easy 2-part watch. I think of the first 3 serials, I think this one is probably the most accessible. Again, I think I'd recommend watching An Unearthly Child first and then maybe watch this. Or if you are used to classic Who and or 60s television, like black and white stuff, like you've watched, let's say, Laurel and Hardy or Buster Keaton and that sort of thing, Charlie Chaplin and maybe something else, Zed Cars or something else in black and white before, maybe a black and white war movie or something, then I think the Daleks would be totally fine for you to watch. It's all studio bound in the TARDIS. It's a bottle episode, I guess, whatever that means. But yeah, it's very cerebral is the one-word description. If someone said, how do you describe the Edge of Destruction in one word, I'd say cerebral. Bill Hartnell is ruthlessly arrogant and stubborn. Very Bill Hartnell, I suppose, in that sense. Barbara is probably the standout one of the 3 side characters. Ian Chesterton is alright, I guess, but he's sort of bounces back and forth between kind of agreeing / disagreeing with the Doctor. And then, as I said earlier, Susan is probably the weakest one, in my humble opinion. And the Doctor is very sort of logical, but also because of that, I guess, very cold and distant. He's a very different character to who we know he becomes, even in, sort of mid to late, sort of Hartnell stories, I guess. Again, it's early days. It's very much about setting up this sort of environment of the TARDIS, and David Whittaker, the writer, does a very good job of doing a lot with a little. It's very atmospheric, in my opinion. The music's actually kind of good. I liked it, but the person that I was watching with hated it, but then they're deaf, so maybe the very high-pitched noises were just really even a bit much for them, even though they were deaf or have hearing aids. They're not deaf, they have hearing aids. But yeah, I love the original TARDIS console. It is funny though seeing the roundels be like, just like literally like drapes, curtains with like roundels printed on them. That's kind of funny to me. Because they don't have enough walls. The food machine, I think, don't quote me on this, but that might be the first time we see the iconic food machine, which I don't quote me on this again, but I don't think it ever pops up ever again in the main canon, for lack of a term, visual story, visual timeline of Doctor Who on TV. I'm not including, comics or books or, the audios, but expanded media might be different. But yeah, I think Barbara just stands up to the Doctor, and I think she's more like she reminds me quite a bit of Leela, but like a civilized sort of 21st century version of Leela. It's weird. Ian Chesterton, again, is decent, but it kind of falls a little bit flat for me. I love, in part 2, the bit where the Doctor's talking about science and this other universe and the stars and the birth of a new universe, and he laughs to himself and he giggles, and it's like, dude, you are so the Doctor. That is like a Doctor Who moment to me, like it's imprinted on me, even though I've only seen it once in the context of the actual story, if that makes sense. Because again, to my earlier point, I've seen that bit in like tribute videos to Doctor Who, and just little moments here and there when people talk about their favourite moments on like Twitter /X or whatever the fuck we're calling it these days. I love the title sequence, of course. It's a classic for a reason. What else? There's not a lot really to talk about this one because it's again only 2 parts. But I mean, even early days, it's just a testament to the experimental nature of Doctor Who. They're doing a lot with a little, in my humble opinion, and the fact that you've had a 4-parter, first story's 4 parts, and then the second story's 7 parts, and then the next story's just 2. They're already experimenting with okay, does the audience like 4 stories, 4 little 25-minute episodes? Do they like 7, a 7 week adventure? Do they like just 2 little adventures, or 2 little small one, because I guess back then, back in like 63, 67, 67, 63, 64, those really early days of Doctor Who, it was important to experiment because they probably couldn't get much feedback from the audience, I don't think, back then, Or it would have been different, it would have been just like letters and that's about it, maybe, or, if particular writers or producers went somewhere and heard that their co-workers' kids slash grandkids were watching Doctor Who and thought XYZ thing, then it'd pass back up to the grapevine, as it were. I don't know if this follows on very well from the Daleks, because it's been a long time since I've watched Doctor Who, the Daleks, but watching this in isolation, it starts very sort of horror-esque with the TARDIS crew all just unconscious. And that, again, I think if you're a modern viewer, the closest comparison I can make to this story is comparing it to Listen with Peter Capaldi, which I think is like his 4th episode in his first run. Very, again, sort of isolated. And maybe the reason why it's so atmospheric and horror-esque to me, I'm not a horror expert, far from it. I really don't care for the genre much myself. But maybe it's just because it has the black and white, like, sort of, I don't want to say filter, but sort of colour grading or filter, I suppose, over it. So it immediately makes it, sort of dark and sort of eerie. You could just see Barbara and Ian just walk down a corridor in black and white and it'd be scary. Oh, not scary, but there'd be something unsettling about it, sort of off tilt about it. Maybe because we have everything in colour these days, so maybe we're not used to it, anymore. Maybe that's why, I don't know. But yeah, I'd give The Edge of Destruction, honestly, maybe a 6 out of 10, maybe a 7. It's definitely sort of slightly above average, in my humble opinion. I maybe when I watch a lot more Bill Hartnell or Troughton or 60s, specifically Classic Who, maybe it'll go way down in my estimations, but for the time being it's a banger for the time being of this recording, because the thing is, that's another thing you've got to take into consideration with me as a Doctor Who fan. 62 is probably my biggest Achilles heel. I've watched a lot more of 70s Doctor Who and a sort of gunshot approach of 80s Doctor Who. And so yeah, I think the sort of cerebral or the sort of the 60s Doctor Who episodes I have watched, they've been few and far between that, like, I'm not comparing it to other 60s Who stuff, because a lot of the stuff that I'm watching is for the first time and I haven't been able to rewatch them, or I haven't been able to compare them to a lot of other stories. Because with Hartnell, I've watched The Edge of Destruction now, Unearthly Child, the Daleks I think I have watched once, I'm pretty sure I have, The 10th Planet and The War Machines. So I've watched, like 4 or 5 episodes, that's it, Not a lot, basically. Quite a few of his stories are missing, and although I have Galaxy 4, both the animation and the Target novelisation, I've never got round to watching either, or watching the animation, or reading the book, or the novelisation, so yeah. That was my review of The Edge of Destruction. Thanks for watching. Please do comment, rate, and subscribe to the channel.